There are a million things that you need to do when you sell your home in Los Angeles. It can be super emotional, stressful, and drive you a little bit crazy. But I'm gonna walk you through every step of the process in this video and give you tips to get you top dollar when you do decide to sell. Now, the first thing you need to do is figure out why you're trying to sell. Are you trying to upgrade your property? Are you trying to downsize? Do you just want to get out from a big mortgage payment? All of these things will help me understand what your goals are, and I'll help you achieve those. Now, you don't typically decide to sell your home in a day. Usually that's a month-long process or multiple months. And that's where I see most sellers drop the ball. During that time period where you're thinking about selling to when you actually make the decision, you can be working on your property to prepare it just in case you do want to sell. There are a lot of steps in this process, so I'm going to go through it and break down each one so you get the most money for your property. Preparing your home for sale is probably the most important part of the home selling process. If you fail to do this correctly, you will see it in your bottom line. So spend some time, spend some money in this section because it will really pay off for you when you go to sell. When you're looking at your property, think of it from a buyer's perspective. Every nook and cranny, if you see something that is broken, fix it. If you see scuff marks all along the walls, along the floor, if you see things that are broken or just don't look good, a buyer's gonna see that as well. Having a real estate agent walk through the property with you is really important. I do this with all of my clients and it makes a huge impact on their bottom line. Things like fresh landscaping, old carpet that needs to be replaced, or refinishing floors. Even remodeling a bathroom might benefit you in getting top dollar for your property. Now let's talk about the inside of the property. I always recommend getting staging on your property. Staging makes a huge impact when you sell your property. It gives the buyer an idea of what the property could look like if it was perfectly designed and curated. Most buyers, in my experience, do not have the vision of what a property could look like. I would say 80% just don't understand it unless they see it. So if you give the buyer the dream that they're looking for with a perfectly staged property with perfect accessories, they will fall in love with the property. And that's what you want. You want a buyer to fall in love with the property because typically if you fall in love, you will pay more money for it. Let's talk about repairs and inspections. And yes, I did say inspections. A lot of times in this market, I am telling sellers to do pre-inspections on the property. A general home inspection, sewer, termite, and a chimney inspection. This will enable us to see if there are any major problems in the property that we would need to address and not get surprised when a buyer does their own inspections. And when there are multiple offers on a property, if you are providing all of these documentation up front, buyers know exactly what they're going to get into, and they will be less likely to try to negotiate a price reduction or a credit for any of those repairs. And in regards to repairs, you want to make sure that they are done prior to putting it on the market. If you don't have the funds, there is a company called Curbio that can do the repairs and then bill you through escrow when you sell. Let's talk about the price of your property. Typically, what you'll do is look at comparable sales in the area. You're going to look at similar type properties. You don't want to look at a 2000 year built home versus a 1910 home. It just doesn't compare. Apples to apples within the same square footage. Now, the cool thing about LA is that all of the homes typically are different. They're all different and unique. They're not like tract homes in Las Vegas. So it depends on the property. If it's fully upgraded, if it's a big lot, if there's a huge view, all of these things factor into your pricing decision. Now, there's two schools of thought. You can price it right at market value, or you can price it below market value. Below market value is going to generate a ton of interest and multiple offers. Typically, those multiple offers will get bid up above the list price depending on how you price it. The idea of putting your home on the market for less than market value really freaks a lot of sellers out. And rightfully so. This is your biggest investment. You want to make sure you get as much money out of it as possible. But in my experience, what happens, because we're in a seller's market right now, and there's so few homes on the market, buyers create a frenzy around your property. You put it just under market value, you'll probably get 5 to 7, 10 offers depending on the area, which will get bid up above the listing price and sometimes above market value. That has been a strategy that I'm seeing often here in the Los Angeles area. It frustrates buyers, but it does generate a lot of traffic and a lot of offers for sellers. So it's something to consider if you're thinking about putting your home on the market. Once your house is completely ready for sale, I am going to hire a professional videographer and photographer who also does drone footage. This is the most critical part in the marketing of your property. 90% of buyers start their search online, and you want to make the best first impression. Matterport research says that homes with virtual walkthroughs sell 31% faster than homes without. So if your real estate agent is not doing a video walkthrough or a drone footage and have your own property website, these are critical things in the sale of your home, and you need to talk to me because I do all those things. One strategy that I like to use when I am listing a home for a client is the targeted open house strategy. This basically means we'll list the house on a Monday or Tuesday, and we will wait to do any showings until Friday or Saturday. We'll put them in a 3-hour window, and it forces most of those buyers to go into the property during those specific times. It creates a lot of competition and a lot of excitement. Then we'll also do a broker open on a Tuesday, which will let more real estate agents come in and preview the property, and some will bring their clients. Now, this doesn't work with every single property, so we have to play it on a case-by-case basis, but this way it creates a lot of excitement and competition with other buyers. Because we're in a seller's market right now, I will usually set a offer deadline date. Now, if we're in not a seller's market, then the strategy changes as well. But if we get multiple offers, what I always do is ask for the highest and best by a specific date. If we have multiple offers, some buyers will go in pretty aggressively just to see what they can get away from with the seller, but you'd be surprised at how much they can raise their offer substantially if there's multiple competition and you ask for highest and best. That's why I think putting a highest and best with multiple counteroffers is always the best way to go. Once you've received all of your highest and best from your multiple offers, assuming this is still a seller's market, then you can send out a multiple counter offer to the top 3 or the one that you want to work with and see if they will agree to the terms that you discussed with your agent. Typically, that happens within 24 to 48 hours. And once you have accepted an offer, then you will go to the next phase of the process, which is opening up escrow. An escrow company is a neutral third-party company that deals with all of the funds from the buyer and the seller. They also coordinate with the title company to make sure that there are no liens or encumbrances on the property. They're a neutral third-party company that doesn't have any stake in with the seller or the buyer. And they make sure that everything is prorated based on the date of ownership, and they make sure that all of those liens are taken care of and paid for if there are any on the property. I'll typically open up escrow with an email with a contract, and then the buyer will wire in their earnest money deposit, typically within 24 to 72 hours. Once your property is in escrow, the buyer will schedule a time for their inspections and the appraisal. Typically, the lender will order the appraisal, the buyer will typically order the inspections, and they can do any inspection that they want on the property that doesn't damage the property. They can't cut through walls, they can't open up, pull back the carpet and see what's underneath. Everything has to be done visually, and typically that inspection period is anywhere between 1 and 10 days. After they receive their inspection reports, they can send you a request for repairs, and that is a negotiation. You can say yes, you can say no, you can offer a different alternative, you can offer them credits. It all depends on the negotiation that you do with the buyer. If there's something significant that we weren't aware of in the property, then it becomes a bigger negotiation. The buyer does have the right to cancel for any reason during their inspection period. So that is really important to know that it is not a done deal until the appraisal and the inspection are done, and then the loan is fully underwritten. Once you've gone through your inspections, the next typical hurdle is the appraisal. The appraisal is a neutral third-party company that is hired by the lender to make sure that the home is worth what the buyer is actually paying for. Sometimes in an appraisal, they will have certain conditions that need to be met in order for that loan to happen. For example, on FHA loans, you can't have peeling eaves, like peeling paint on the eaves. That is a big no-no. So that will need to be corrected in order for the buyer to get financing on the property. If you do not want to do those repairs, most likely this buyer will not be able to get that property. So just keep that in mind when you are looking at offers, and the appraisal conditions are part of the contingency of the loan. So if you're not willing to do some of those repairs, then you might not get a house sold with this particular buyer. The other thing about appraisals, let's say you have a contract for $1.5 million, but it appraises at $1.4 million. So you have 4 options in this scenario. The buyer can pay the difference from the appraised value to the contract value. The other option is you reduce the sales price to the appraised value. If I'm representing the seller, I'm going to try to get the first one. You also do somewhere in the middle. The buyer pays up a little bit above and the seller reduces a little bit below their contract value, or we can cancel the transaction. You are not obligated to move forward if a property does not appraise. However, keep in mind that if this appraised at this price, it might appraise at that same price with a different buyer. So you definitely want to make sure that you're negotiating as much as you can with the current buyer, because it could happen again if you switch to another buyer. But I can give you all of your options if that scenario does happen. Okay, so you've got your appraisal, you got your inspection. Now the next part is the loan contingency, and if you had to do any repairs, to do any of those kind of repairs. Once the loan contingency has been approved, they will remove all your contingencies. Typically, at that point, you're pretty solid that this is gonna go through. I have seen things happen at the very, very last minute, so just keep in mind there are some risks still, like it could get hit by a bus or they lose their job all of a sudden. It has happened in the past, but once they have removed all their contingencies, it's a pretty solid deal and you can start making plans to move forward to your next place. After all your contingencies have been removed from the buyer's side, they just have to do their walkthrough and sign their documents. We will also sign our seller documents with escrow to make sure that everything is in proper order and it's just a transfer of the deed to the new buyer. Now, if you were purchasing a property as well, that's a whole nother video, but I can explain on how we work that process. Once the deed has been recorded in the new buyer's name, you are no longer the owner of that property. If you close the property on a Friday, you won't get your funds until Monday. So some sellers like to close on a Monday or close on a Thursday. That way they can get their funds before the weekend. Typically, you want to make sure that the utilities are on until the property closes, and then it can switch over into the new buyer's name. And if you have any other questions about the home selling process, this is a lot of information and I went very quickly. So when I'm working with the seller, I will walk you through every step of the process with more detail. So make sure that if you have any questions, please reach out to me. My phone number is 213-268-6832, and I'm happy to help you sell your home here in the Los Angeles area.